Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing a pattern hack with you, and it is for my summer 2025 Know Me pattern. This is ME2123. I am going to be hacking view A, which is the t-shirt. It's a raglan t-shirt. I'm going to be making a dress. And instead of just lengthening it and making a t-shirt dress, I decided to add a little detail with a waist seam and a drawstring casing. I did make this for my daughter Penny, so I made it in the girl size. If you are unfamiliar, this does come in both Mrs. and girl sizes. The pattern hack is the same across the board, so if you want to make it in Mrs., girls, whatever, it works. I just happen to make this one for my daughter. Here it is. Here's the cute little dress. And you can see here on her, isn't she cute? But there you can see the casing and the little drawstring ribbon. But I will show you how to hack the pattern as well as sew that up together. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I did was take my front and back pattern pieces and I traced them onto new paper. And then you will see on the original pattern pieces, the waistline is marked, so I transferred that as well. So you need to determine where you want the waist seam of the dress, where that drawstring will be, where you want that to hit on you, if this waistline on the pattern hits you at the correct spot or not. I have determined for Penny that she actually needs it to be about a ½ inch lower. So I'm going to mark that. And then once you've determined that, so I'm not going to do this one. Once you've determined where you want the waist seam to be, you need to add your 5/8 seam allowance. So do that on the front and the back, determine where you want the waist seam to be, and then add 5/8 of an inch, and you can cut that off now. I almost forgot, if you leave this waist seam straight like this, it might sit a little funny. So what I like to do is curve it up just slightly towards a side seam. I'm just going to go about, ½ inch or so, and then just curve it up. As you can see, I do things roughly, not exactly. But so this will now be your front and back bodice piece for your dress. You will be using the same exact neckband that's provided and the same sleeve pattern. So now let's make the skirt half. You should only need to make one skirt pattern because the front and the back bodice are pretty much the same exact width. So you can make one pattern piece and you will just cut it out for both the front and the back. Okay, so I am taking a blank sheet of paper here and I'm going to start with my front bodice. If you don't have a straight edge of the paper, you can draw a straight line, but the straight paper edge of the paper here is straight, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to line up the straight center front of the bodice, and I'm just going to mark where that bodice ends. I'm actually going to draw the straight line at the bottom of the bodice. So there's the top half of our skirt. So you need to determine how long you want the finished measurement of the skirt to be. From the waistline, wherever you want the drawstring to hit, the finished measurement from there to the hem. For Penny, I want it to be about 16 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. I'm going to start there. Now I want the side, I don't want it to be straight down. Doesn't give a lot of wiggle room, so I'm going to do like a little bit of a line here. I'm just going to angle that ruler out. That seems good. I'm going to do my 16 inches to there. I'm just going to so there is my skirt shape. Don't forget to add your 5/8 of an inch at the top for your seam allowance. And then also you will need to add your hem allowance. How much you add for hem allowance is up to you. The hem on the original t-shirt is 1 1/4. I don't think you need that for the hem of the dress, so whatever you prefer. I'm just going to do 1 inch. Actually, yeah, I'm going to do 1 inch. And then you can cut that out. So this will be your front and back skirt. You will need to cut 2 on the fold. This is the edge here that you will cut on the fold. Okay, I have all my pieces cut out. In the contrasting fabric, I have cut my sleeves and my neckband. And then in my main fabric, I have 2 of the skirt here. Here's that. And then of course, here is the front bodice and the back bodice. There is one more piece we need to cut from the main fabric. I just prefer to do that after we have the bodice put together because I think it's easier to measure. Just make sure you have enough of your main fabric left to cut a nice long strip. It'll be about that waist measurement by a couple of inches wide. So go ahead, as I've done here, and construct the bodice top half of your dress following the instructions exactly. You're basically making a cropped version of the t-shirt. So do everything except for hem the bottom half. So here I've done that. And now we need to make that last piece like I talked about, which is the drawstring casing. If you haven't taken the measurements already, I'm now going to lay this nice and flat, and I'm going to measure the finished length all around the front and back. I want that entire length. Okay, so once you have that measurement, you're going to take that and subtract 3/4 of an inch. So that entire length measurement of this waistline, front and back, subtract 3/4 of an inch. You will then want to cut a strip of fabric that's that length by 2.5 inches wide. This fabric is curling, but this is my strip of fabric that I'm going to use for the casing. 2.5 inches wide. So the first thing you want to do is fold under both short ends of the drawstring casing by 1/4 of an inch, and then top stitch that to stitch it down. That's 1/4 of an inch on each of the short ends, and then fold it in half lengthwise with wrong sides together. Okay, sorry, I had to pin that because the fabric kept curling. So you first folded under the short ends by 1/4 of an inch, and then stitch that down, and then you fold it in half lengthwise with wrong sides together. You want to mark the center of your drawstring casing. Redo that now because I can't find it. Find that center. Mark the center of the casing. You are also going to want to mark the center front and center back of your bodice. There's my center front. There's my center back. So starting on the back, we are going to be pinning this casing to the lower edge of the bodice. The raw edge of the casing against the raw edge of the bodice. So find that center mark on your casing and match it up with the center back raw edges together. Now come around to the front. You have that center front marked. I am just going to mark 1/2 inch on either side of center front. Here we go, we have the center front in the middle. I've marked 1/2 inch on either side. So I'm going to bring that casing around, and that edge that we stitched under, we're going to mark up with that 1/2 inch away from center front. Raw edges together. And then you can just open it up and finish pinning around the entire raw edge of this side. So there's the center front, this side is pinned. I'll do the same thing with the other side. Bring this around, match it up with the other 1/2 inch away from center front marking, and do the same exact thing, lining up the raw edges. The casing is on. Here I have a gap here right at center front, pinned all the way around. What you are going to do is you are going to stitch close to the top edge, the folded edge of the casing. You want to stitch close to that edge to attach it to the bodice. You can also baste along the raw edge too if you want to keep that in place, but it's not 100% necessary. I've stitched that on along the top edge, the folded edge here of the casing. Like I said, you can baste along the bottom edge too. For now, I've just left the pins in there. And when you stitch along this top edge, you can use a straight stitch if you like. It really doesn't matter in this instance, or you can use a zigzag stitch. It's up to you. So we're going to set this aside for a second. So next, take your 2 skirt pieces, and with right sides together, you will just want to sew the side seams, the 2 side seams, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Once you have the side seams of the skirt sewn, you're going to keep it inside out, and you're going to take your top half and you're going to slide it in so that right sides of the skirt and the bodice are together, and you're going to line up those raw edges so that the drawstring casing is sandwiched in between. Match up the seam allowance, or match up the side seams. Raw edges aligned. That drawstring casing that is sewn to the bodice is sandwiched in between. You can go ahead and stitch that together. So after you've sewn it together at the waist, you can flip it back right side out. And you can see there that that leaves a nice little casing there to put your drawstring in. So before we do that, just quickly hem your dress using whatever hem allowance you left when you made your skirt pattern. And that is all the sewing that needs to be done. Now you can just put in your drawstring. You can use whatever you'd like. You can make a drawstring using the same fabric or the contrasting fabric. You can use ribbon, cording, whatever you'd like. I'm just going to use this white twill tape, and I'm going to use a safety pin to thread it through the casing. So put it through one end, use your fingers to guide it through. And there you have it. Then you can just cinch the waist with the drawstring, give it a little tie, and you're all done.